Hey everyone, it's Tim with you on the buzz. I'm with you all the way to 3 p.m. We've got just half an hour left on the show, but I've got some cool news around the lines of what Oakland will look like in the future. Now talking about the future, we know that there's going to be a ton of tech built in whatever we are doing. If it is transport, if it is convenience, if it is home appliances, smart appliances, there's a ton of these going on, right? Now to add to it, there's basically a conversation around what Oakland will look like. Now, if you want to understand how the pandemic has basically affected things, we know that talking about the UAE, right? Now, the UAE is a big factor that comes into play, or a country that comes into play when we're talking about different countries or what they look like when it comes to innovation or transportation, things like this, topics like this, right? Now, I've got a cool couple of topics for you, and points to actually help you out in terms of understanding what it's going to look like in the future. So stay tuned here on the buzz. I'm going to be right back with you. I'm going to show you a couple of videos of who we are at Relaks Radio and be right back with you. Tell him what. That's right. Now we're at Relax Radio. We're with you on the way, all the way till 3 p.m. This is the buzz, and this is the place you need to be when you're trying to know about what's happening, everything business, tech, entrepreneurship. Now coming back to the topic, now I mean, I'm super interested in understanding what public transport will be like, what other communication platforms will look like, or even things like ordering, logistics. You probably just things like ordering things, visiting the supermarket, going to the clothing store, walking around in stores and understanding what you want will be all a part of part of the past, because things like augmented reality, all these cool concepts are only beginning, right, to come into play. Now talking about anxious citizens and then trying to understand what your shelters will look like, people are seeking for a bit of fresh air. I mean, I personally, being at home, it does get a little frustrating. Now, you might not have to be outside, traveling all the time, but then, in terms of understanding how, authorities know about COVID-19, or when you're trying to understand that, staying at home is obviously a recipe for disaster, because your productivity is not at its peak, and, you might feel like it gets a little monotonous in your day. Now, the solution is basically for a policy known as slow streets, and this is an aggressive plan to close about 120 kilometers of city. Now these are roads for mostly car traffic, but then if you're trying to understand, these are also for places like walking, jogging, biking, other outdoor activities, like places like if you're talking about Oakland's move, where partly following its lead, there are anxious prolonging dialogues that basically go across the whole of the country. But then when you're talking about countries like the United States, they too have anxious dialogue programs where they basically concentrate around the conversations of the urban fabrics, and then how they would seem overnight. Because in the movies they always seem very aesthetic, right? Aesthetic, and then they you don't need to really try to fake it off when you're talking about different cities, when you watch it in the movies, at least, right? Now, cities have basically been shaped by disease. Now we know that things like I mean, this was also news to me when I learned that cities like during the plague, or things like China's Western Han Dynasty, these are basically infected citizens, obviously, into isolation houses. And then, the yellow fever outbreak in Philadelphia, that is in 1793, these held a spur in creation of, a sanitization department, municipal or garbage collection. And then, talking about how the cholera epidemics in the 1800s have led to designers favoring straighter boulevards. It's funny how, I'd say, coincidence, or, health, things like the common necessities have basically designed for people to think of coordination, transport, reaching out to others. Just like we talk here about the boulevards, right? Now, here, apart from the yellow fever outbreak in Philadelphia, we are also considering the cholera epidemics that's in the 1800s that have basically led to designer favoring straighter boulevards. Now, this has basically prevented infecting water from pool sides. Now, this is like you see it in crooks, you see it in moderated long pipes, and they always consider how water has to always travel more efficiently, because these things when you're designing a city, you'll never. I mean, who would have thought that designing a city, or its convenience, its productivity, its efficiency, eventually the GDP, or the amount of earnings in the city, has this basically gone. I mean, the design of the city has also affected that, and what has affected the design is also avoiding unnecessary problems or sicknesses like cholera, or the fevers, right? Now, these pipe systems are basically designed in the lines of helping water flow so much easier. Now, the reason they want the water to flow so much easier is because you don't want it to stagnate, you don't want it to get dirty, you don't want germs to come in and then infect it, right? But when you're going down in the lines of the coronavirus, when you're talking about Oakland streets, parking spaces, commercial districts, now these have been converted into parklets so people can actually dine in and then give areas of that European feel. I mean, it's also new because I'd say not everyone is used to it, but then I mean, it's not like we have a choice, right? We need to understand that things are coming to. I mean, we are where we are, and we can't really avoid the situation. It's not a joke, nor is it a myth where we need to consider more, put into a bit more consideration of where and how much of atmosphere is coming in, how much of natural air comes in and goes out, things like that, right? Now, accommodating things like the pipes underneath, making sure the water moves efficiently, making sure things like the approach of the urban design is conveniently placed. Now, these are all concerns that people actually designers rather, or I'd say architects actually look into. Now, it's super cool because when you're talking about Oakland streets, these are parking spaces in certain commercial districts that have been converted into parklets. Now, like I said, these are some of the diners. These are some of the temporary, the car light that is in play. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down in the lines of where the government comes into play. Where I mean, in April at least, where a couple of kilometers down the road, what people have actually put into consideration. Stay tuned right here on Relaks Radio. I'm going to show you and break it down for you further. My name is Tim, and you're on the buzz. Now coming further into the conversation where you have the resource, you have the spades of the streets, and then considering the integrity relations of the mayor's office. Now people are saying that people, they are not using these to commute anymore. But when you're talking about the sense of safety, when you're talking about the community, people need to actually leave their homes like for a while, right? Now, apart from the April announcement, Oakland has basically moved in the signs of the 8-4 streets or different neighborhoods. Now, these indicate that apart from the fact that you're close to traffic, you need to also calculate, how many kilometers you're traveling, how much of, miles you're actually looking at in terms of design, and then trying to show the city, right? Now, you don't want everything just to be convenient. You want it to be a bit aesthetic, right? Like, again, I'm just bringing the movies back just for effect, right? Now, how when you're entering a city or something of that sort, you basically look at it in the lines of where you are going, and then look at it in the lines of what you're talking about. Now, what I'm saying is you need to consider the aesthetics when you're entering a city or a highway. You need to be able to have a look at it as well. Now, also Oakland showing itself. The country has basically governed itself, and when you're getting out of your own way, fairly soon, the city administrators have realized that they need to change track. And, surveys have been conducted online for, the residents in wealthier and whiter neighborhoods. Also in America, the fact that the cities are segregated, they are equitable, but then, systematically unjust again. But when you're talking about how this Department of Transportation has basically avoided or put into consideration the pandemic, they need to understand that there is a separation of racial or economic lines that are still coming into play. I mean, we are in the 21st century. It is 2021, but we still have some racism going on, right? That needs to be considered with this. So now, when you're talking about how officials have basically grouped out several organizations, from East Oakland, when you're talking about the residents, some might be poorer and might come from marginalized backgrounds, but then you need to understand that many of them need to also get into hospitals. So apart from that, you need to understand that, there's also essential workers, there's also, places of business, there's street flow programs, and then you need to understand the simple structure of things like, the speed bumps, talking about how there is also, stop signs installed, and then moving in the lines of the challenges that, there might be a couple of different dialogues that will address challenges like that. So what I've got to say is, apart from the fact that there is also another conversation with how the city is actually reaching its intended goals of 120 kilometers of roads, and then settling for around 34 kilometers of the summer, and deciding against. You need to decide also against, this is based on the feedback that it has received back in 2020. And, it's the most raw content, it's the most raw feedback that we have when it comes to designing a city from the pandemic, right? Brightly modified, bicycle creates color of youth, right? It encourages a greener travel system. And then also concentrating on a picture of two black girls playing. Now that shows, I'd say, meaningful, culturally competent ways of finding yourself, right? Now, you need to reflect back to the community and understand that they are talking about you as well. So, slow streets to iterate throughout 2020 in June. Oakland has rolled out an initiative called Flex Streets to help businesses and restaurant initiatives to push through. But what I'm going to do is, before breaking down how these countries, when I'm talking about things like parklets, when I'm talking about things like the money or how much of time they're saving in transport, I'm going to be breaking these down for you as well. I want you to stay tuned on the buzz. This is Relaks Radio. You can always feel free to comment, like, share, subscribe to our videos. You can obviously subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our videos, and also subscribe to hit the plus icon on Facebook so you don't miss any of our live sessions. Now, I'm going to be showing you a couple of videos on who we are and what we do. But before that, and after that, I'm going to be running you through these topics. Stay tuned. This is Tim on Relaks Radio, and you're tuned in on The Buzz.
it's something really impossible to do. Resolution I don't know.
Hari, in that case,
I gave you that simple solution. You just have to upload the images and then you can get it.
Yeah. No, did you see the picture that Navish sent? Did you see the picture that of what it looks like? Navish, did you send the picture?
Yeah, she sent the picture. I understand.
Now talking, in the lines of how you need to design a meaningful city, you need to design a meaningful or culturally competent way of finding, their progress. Now you need to, like I said, you need to reflect on what the community wanted or what they will want, and then design it in that way, right? So, slow streets have basically continued to iterate around 2020. Now this is in June-ish, so with the pandemic, you couldn't really say what was happening, but then moving down the line to flex streets or having businesses and restaurants apply for build markets or parklets in front of storefronts. Now, the previously, cumbersome process was basically highly bureaucratic, and although these have been slowed down by different businesses, I'd say the owners' complaints, things like this have basically given a lot of reviews or feedback in terms of how people have been put into consideration the time and the money that will come out of the city when designing it. So I'd say when I'm talking about the storefronts, these are small spaces that have basically been appearing out of the city, and then the cumbersome processes, from previous times, have basically broken down in the lines of what type of templates these have. If these single review officials have been actually saving time and money, then outside advocates. Now I mean, if I visit a city, I'm going to definitely want to know, how convenient it is, what the design looks like, and then aesthetics plays a big game, right? But also convenience, water supply, electricity. These things are crucial. These things are critical for a company or a city, right? Who would have thought that designing things like this have a major impact on designing or the design of all productivity, even the efficiency of the performance of a city, right? So overall, I'd say Oakland has basically spent a trim $160,000 on material costs for both slow streets and essential places, right? And then when you're moving it in the lines of COVID-19 testing sites, these are done, I'd say over the course of the year. Now, moving to the city from DC, right? These are, places that people will be more open to dialogues, and then they'll be, hoping for future trials to, have an appetite in the lines of progressive changes, or if you're looking at infrastructure and then transportation changes. So what is necessary is, the mother of invention, and then, the pandemic and how it has basically created a ton of opportunities. Now, we're looking at, how it has reminded us of the importance of urban spaces, and then, being together as human beings. This is definitely, I'd say, me personally, we're all in a rush, right? And then when we prioritize other things, we prioritize, going to work, going to office, and then things like running around in the spaces. Yeah, you need to understand that it has a major impact in the lines of shutting down the 10th of the streets, and then how through traffic these would have likely been a non-starter. Now, people have basically been understanding each other better in terms of renovations and so on, but then the lasting impact is to basically hope for solid performance, that you have flexibility, you have innovation, and then you need other understanding of people running through the digital society, digital magazine, and then exploring how technology in the city or a society works, right? Now, it's produced that a publishing partnership with Wantable, but the content is editorially independent. But then what we're talking about is that you need to understand, if you are when you're traveling in the city, let's say the slow streets, for instance, you need to understand how the administration, the continuity, the initiatives are basically a part of the toolkit. Now, if you actually have any questions along the lines of the design of a city and how it actually performs, how the performance is impacted on the design of a city, performance of the city, right? You need to, feel free to comment, share, comment on this video, send me a message, or call me up on 078-524-73473, and we can actually get a conversation going. Now, we had a cool conversation with Chris Slater-Jones earlier today, from 12 to 1. The video is on Facebook, the video is on Instagram, it's on Twitter as well. Feel free to watch it and understand the billionaires and how their net worth is actually calculated. Even if we spoke about a couple of tips on how you as a person, as an individual, as the everyday person can basically also put into consideration how your personal net worth can grow, and then calculating that how you can actually compound different things on a monthly basis to increase your net worth. So feel free to like, share, subscribe to our videos. You can hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We are on all these channels as well. You can also comment on this video. My number is 078-524-73473. I'm heading off for the day, but we've got Nick coming in with a lot of conversations around what is happening in the UK, what is happening in the real world. Keeping you updated on what needs to be, what is actually going on, so you can actually, when you head out of home or the office, what to actually talk about, what actually is going on in the city. My name is Tim, and I'll be with you tomorrow from 12 to 3 p.m. on Relaks Radio. This is The Buzz, and I'm signing out. Good evening.